Greetings all. Welcome to CBS Sports HQ, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more on this Christmas Eve. My name is Russ Thaler, and we may have to wait a week for the college football playoffs to resume, but there is no shortage of bowl activity coming our way towards the end of this week. 5 games on the bowl schedule set for Friday beginning at noon Eastern, continuing into the night out west. Vandy's biggest win, well, ever, came against Alabama this season. They'll get to play in that state against Georgia Tech in the Birmingham Bowl. Navy made its season by beating Army. The midshipmen will look to complete the mission against Oklahoma in the Armed Service Bowl. And I'm sure USC and Texas A&M's fan bases would have wanted for more, but hey, it's a trip to Vegas in December. That's the nightcap on Friday. Looking ahead to Friday's bowl games, Russ Thaler here with Chip Patterson, and we also have Danny Kanell. Chip is coming our way from the North Pole. Danny Kanell looks like he's in the workshop there, and we're ready to talk about some bowl games on Friday. Hey, let's start with the Armed Services Bowl, because you got 3 straight wins from an armed forces school in those games, 5 of the last 7. You got Navy underdogs getting 3.5 against Oklahoma. Totals 43.5. Chip, how would you play this game?
I would play this game like it's going to be a competitive game. I think Navy's going to play really well. I would give Navy a decent shot to win, just not necessarily going to bite here at this price. And so I'm thinking about the way Navy's going to approach this. They're going to come in, they're going to try to limit the game, shorten it, rely on a defense that came up with some huge turnovers in the win against Army. And Oklahoma all season long, because of their offensive ineffectiveness, was a big-time under team. Brent Venables had that Sooners defense keyed up all season long. And so full game under, I don't hate, but that first half under in this game, I absolutely love.
I like that, Chip. I like that side. Danny Claus here, giving out winners here on Christmas Eve. I'm going to tackle the game itself. You know, you might be surprised because this is all like who's playing, who's not. Oklahoma does not have Danny Stutzman. They don't have Billy Bowman. They don't have Jackson Arnold. A lot of their key players, especially those 2 guys on the defensive side of the ball, not playing in this game. But they still do have a quarterback in Harrison Jr., who did play a lot this year and is planning to try to save his job from the incoming class that's coming in, including one John Mateer. You've got a freshman running back in Xavier Robbins, who I think is going to get a healthy workload. And don't forget, I think, Chip, you'll like this road down the memory lane. Brent Venables used to face Georgia Tech and Paul Johnson in that triple option a lot when he was the defensive coordinator at Clemson. Extra time to prepare helps them slow down Navy's offense. So I think Oklahoma wins and covers. I'll lay the 3.5.
All right, let's
go.
Well, then, look, 45th annual Holiday Bowl, first time ever for Syracuse. Massive favorites. They're giving 16.5 to Washington State. Very un-bowl-like here. Danny, do you think the Cuse can cover?
I do. There has been a mass exodus from Washington State, right? We just talked about John Mateer. He's going to Oklahoma with his offensive coordinator, who came from where? Washington State. Then on the flip side, you look at Fran Brown's Syracuse team. Kyle McCord is going to play this game to try to increase his draft stock. And there is a great quote out there when he was asked about his players playing, and he said, "No, why wouldn't my players play? My players love to play football." I think this team has the right mentality. I am not scared of the big number. Kyle McCord's been one of the best passing quarterbacks in the country. Even our producer Mayro knows all about that because he saw him torch the Miami Hurricanes in that last game of the season. I think they cap it off with a win and a 10-win season in year 1. The Syracuse Orange get it done. It's a big number, but I'm laying it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised there. I'm seeing this the way that you are, in that we both see a ton of yards and touchdowns for Kyle McCord, that this Orange offense that was so explosive against almost everyone that they played, that going up against a team that is a total shell of itself, against a Washington State defense that also has been known to get caught up in some shootouts. Yeah, I think that Syracuse is going to move down the field quickly, score early, score often. What I have no idea about is where we're at with Washington State, because Syracuse's defense has also given up a lot of points and gotten caught in a lot of these shootouts that Syracuse can win. But, 44-41, 42-38, like those kind of scores, wouldn't be surprised to see that here. So I'm only going to focus on the Syracuse side of this. Feels like an over, but more than anything, it feels like a Syracuse team total over 37.5.
Look, and the total over in this game is 59.5. The Holiday Bowl has seen its share of shootouts. through the years, no team has played the Holiday Bowl more than BYU. And if you remember, those BYU teams over the years always put up some huge numbers. Hey, let's talk about two teams that haven't met since the 1977 Blue Bonnet Bowl. Remember those bowls? Texas A&M and USC. Two teams that come in with so much NIL cash, and here they are going to Vegas on a random Friday night at the end of December. A&M's 3.5-point favorites here. Danny, how you seeing it?
This is a tough one, Russ. This is probably one of my least favorite bowls that I'm picking. I feel like it's too easy because USC, we've seen a mass exodus of players. We were talking about this on the Cover 3 pod. Like, the wide receiver room feels like it's been absolutely decimated. You've had, a quarterback in Jaden Maeva take over late in the season. Where's the health of this program? And then you got Texas A&M, who's been very up and down. They were disappointing me at the finish of the season, but I do trust them more as far as culturally who wants to show up, who wants to play more in this one. I think USC is going to go out and hit the portal and try to revamp this roster completely. A&M, everyone's has turnover in college football, but I just feel like Mike Elko's squad, I trust a little bit more, and that defense I think could have their way. So I'll lay them with Texas A&M.
I'm on the other side of this one because I am trusting the untrustworthy Lincoln Riley. But I'm doing that based on some previous behavior. That previous behavior being the way that USC showed up to last year's Holiday Bowl, the preparation that was put in, and the performance that followed. Because last year, they also had a lot of opt-outs and a lot of transfers out of the program. Most notably, Caleb Williams not playing in that game. And yet we saw Miller Moss show up with an absolutely stellar game plan put together by Lincoln Riley to pick apart Louisville's defense. And I think that Texas A&M, in part because of injuries and now because of some of the opt-outs that they'll be facing, they're just a shade down from what their ceiling can be, which means I think they're gettable. So looking at last year's bowl game as my example, I'm going to say that Lincoln Riley knows a win here can do a lot to change the narrative and sort of flip things around as they go into 25. I'll take USC plus the 3.5.
All right, Danny and Chip on the opposite sides of this one. Chip, you're on a roll right now, so let's get to your parlay picks for a Friday presented by FanDuel. What do you got?
All right, so I went over to FanDuel Sportsbook where you can make every moment more, and I started looking at the games, and I started playing out your Friday. And this is what I like to call the whiplash parlay, because we start the day with unders. That would be the Oklahoma Navy alt under 49.5, Georgia Tech Vanderbilt alt under 58.5, and then just when you're getting sluggish, pew, 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 here come all of our overs. We're going Texas, Arkansas alt over 44.5, and then the Syracuse alternate team total over 33.5. So if you see what I did there, I just moved everything around some key numbers, packaged it all together, put a bow on top. Happy Merry Christmas after the fact on Friday.
All right, Chip, thank you very much. Danny, hang around because we're going to be talking about Saturday's games coming up, and you've got the parlays for that one. College football parlays presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. The college football playoffs are here. You can bet on all the big matchups with FanDuel. Plus, right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if you win. Just scan the QR code to bet college football on America's #1 sportsbook. When we come back, we'll be handicapping some of Saturday's best bowl games, including a look at the potential #1 pick in the draft. And I could be talking about Cam Ward of Miami or Shedeur Sanders of Colorado, both in action Saturday. We're back on the HQ after this. We have ourselves a stacked slate of college football bowl games coming your way on Saturday, 8 of them in all. Here's a look at just some of them. The final game before the Bill Belichick era begins in Chapel Hill takes place in Boston, with North Carolina taking on UConn. Nebraska and Boston College playing the Pinstripe Bowl from Yankee Stadium. Pop-Tarts Bowl may have the best of all trophies, and you got two teams that could have been playing in the playoff. Instead, they're facing each other in Orlando. And then you got BYU and Colorado. Fascinating game between a couple of Big 12 teams in the Alamo Bowl on Saturday night. And back here on the HQ, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. Russ Taylor here in studio. We've got Santa Danny Kanell and Chip Patterson joining us for some picks. As I mentioned, 8 bowl games. We can't hit them all. We simply don't have the time. But we're going to have 3 in a parlay for everybody. Let's start at Fenway Park. It's the Fenway Bowl, UConn and North Carolina. The big note here is that, correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, all the players on North Carolina are essentially trying out for Bill Belichick at this point? Is that how it is? They're favored by 2.5. What do you think?
Oh, yes, they are. And this is one of the reasons I'm laying them with North Carolina. Look, I lived in Connecticut, and there's a lot of UConn fans up in the New England area. But you know what? It's not basketball season. This is New England, and this is Bill Belichick in Fenway Park. Are you kidding me? Because I'd imagine that shadow is going to loom large when he's watching that game. And you are 1,000% right. I think a lot of times we look at the negative, like, oh, we've lost a head coach. And I love Mac Brown, and he's not there, and he's not going to be coaching them. But a lot of times when there is an incoming coach, you want to impress that coach. And the question we always ask is who wants to be there? Who wants to impress? You are 1,000% right. I'm going to count on North Carolina's players wanting to impress Bill Belichick as an audition for next season, and they're feeling each other out. So I think they show up and they play big. I'm going to say they win and cover.
Let the children sing.
Yes.
All right. So just to elaborate on this, because clearly we are all in agreement, the interim coach is often a reason why you think players might not be dialed in, but the interim coach in this situation is going to be a member of Bill Belichick's staff. That is Freddie Kitchens. He is going to be on that offensive staff. He is the interim coach for this game. He's been leading the bowl practices. So not only do you have Bill Belichick around Chapel Hill, monitoring the action, putting together his scouting and developing plan, but the actual coach in the game, you are playing for someone who is still going to be a part of that staff. They are trying out for the 2025 roster. Maybe not to make the team, but definitely for playing time. The work that was put in preparation for this game might even be more valuable than what happens in the game itself, but all of it leaves the Tar Heels much more motivated than you could have ever imagined given the coaching change. You know,
motivation is going to be a huge part of the Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando. I'm fascinated to see how Iowa State and Miami come up. We're talking about two teams. Iowa State literally one win away from making the playoff for sure. Miami, everyone seems to think if they had won that game against Syracuse, they're in as well. Both those teams lost those games coming into a bowl. Now they're facing each other. Miami's 3.5-point favorites. They will have Cam Ward, which may be one of the good things about NIL. I don't know if he would have been playing in this game otherwise, but either way, the possible #1 overall pick in the draft is going to be playing in this game against Iowa State. Miami 3.5-point favorites. The total's 55.5. Chip, how are you looking at this one?
Play them and don't look back. Maybe even look at an alt line or a Miami team total. First of all, I do think that the trend that we have been seeing with a lot of these star players deciding that they are going to play, love that. I mean, that's the pendulum swinging the other way from massive opt-outs. And you're right, Russ, maybe NIL does play a factor, and it certainly does play a factor, but I do think that there's something about the competitiveness that we see from a player of Ward's stature who's been through so much, from Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami, that he wants to go in and finish the job. I think that is a great example to be set for future stars that will follow. And in this matchup, Cam Ward or no Cam Ward, there is an athleticism advantage of Miami's skill position talent against Iowa State's defense. That is the one thing that we saw in some of Iowa State's more difficult performances. When they went up against an offense that had a certain level of athletic talent, the back seven of those Cyclones defense could not keep up in the open field. I think we see a lot more of that. I think Miami rolls offensively and covers the spread.
Yeah, Chip, I think this game is the example of positive peer pressure, right? Because we see Cam Ward, he's going to play, and I think in large part because he was watching his offseason training partner, Shedeur Sanders, when he had him on his show, and Shedeur's like, I'm playing. Are you playing? And he's like, yeah, I got to go get ready for the bowl. And guess what else? With Shedeur playing later that night, I think Cam Ward wants to show out. These two guys are buddies, but they're also intense competitors. And this will be their last audition before the NFL draft process takes place, in which they're probably going to be the first and second quarterback off the board. So they want to show out. So I think you're going to get that. What I am not as confident as you is in Miami's defense to be able to get the stops against Rocco Becht and company, including its two 1,000-yard receivers. So I think it's a higher scoring game. That's what I'm going to tackle the total, because I know Miami's going to put up big points. So I think they're going to score, but I also think Iowa State is. So I will take the over in this game, in a high scoring game, which I think will be a really fun game because of what Russ was talking about. I think both of these teams want to prove they could have been in this playoff and done some damage.
Yeah, and talk about about positive peer pressure, Danny, not only are we going to see probably the top 2 quarterbacks selected in the draft playing on Saturday, we're probably going to see the first non-quarterback taken as well in Travis Hunter, because you're going to see Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders suiting up for Colorado when they take on BYU in the Alamo Bowl. First of all, first time ever 2 Big 12 teams are meeting in a bowl game. That's something. Colorado's favored by 3.5. Danny, how do you see that game unfolding?
The one thing in the Big 12, which has happened all year long, is there's been a lot of parity. We've seen a lot of tight games, and I do like Colorado in this circumstance, but it's a bigger number. Over that field goal, I'm going to take BYU. Kalani Sitake has done a phenomenal job, and I think his quarterback, who's been phenomenal all season long, is going to be able to put up some points against Colorado's defense. He's mobile enough to get away from that pass rush, and the run defense, I think, will be susceptible to BYU's run game. But Shedeur Sanders, who I think has been the best decision maker in the pocket. His football IQ is off the charts. I think he gets it done late. I think Colorado wins by a field goal. So give me BYU in those 3.5 points.
And I do love that we've got Shedeur Sanders, that we've got Travis Hunter. You know, everything that we've been talking about with Cam Ward and the positive peer pressure that Danny mentions, that's all great. But the cynic and the realist in me says the second that one thing gets a little bit twisted, or maybe we get a little bit of a scare, they're getting right out of the game. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Colorado minus the 2.5 on the first half line. The idea is they come out, they want to get off to a hot start, and then if anything happens along the way, or maybe even there is a plan that involves not being there for the full 60 minutes, I've got a little bit of security and a little bit of insurance there. Plus, as Danny mentioned, this is a Colorado defense that can run a little hot and cold. There is 100% a scenario that I can envision that involves a blown lead from a BYU team that has shown the ability to overcome deficits and be resilient throughout this season. So I'm just going to take Colorado and the Superstars in the first half, then protect myself against the back door in that fourth quarter.
Little hedge. That's spoken by a man who's done this before. Time for the Saturday parlays. Danny's got them, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Take it away, Danny.
All right, Russ, I'm going to start off with an outright upset by the Boston College Eagles. Bill O'Brien has done a phenomenal job there at Boston College. And the last time I saw Nebraska, their last win of the season, they were storming the field because they had a 6th win just to get bowl eligible. I think they forgot they still got to go play this game in the cold in Yankee Stadium. And Bill O'Brien, even though he's losing his quarterback that played most of the year, Grayson James, who's coming up behind Thomas Castellanos, has been pretty good. So I'm going to say Boston College wins that game outright. So that's the upset to give you a little value. And then I'm going to go with the 2 games we just talked about in this segment. Miami, yes, I think it's a high-scoring affair, but I think they win. I was a little bit nervous about the points, so just take it on the money line at -160. And same thing for Colorado. And I like Chip's assessment, but I think this team will be out in front and they will come through in the clutch when it matters. Even if it's under a field goal, all we need is a 1-point win. Colorado wins. Total value +103 to hit those 3. Go get them. Enjoy it. Buy yourself something nice for Christmas with those winnings.
There you go. Danny Kanell with an early Christmas present for everybody. Merry Christmas, Danny. Merry Christmas, Chip Patterson. Thank you guys so much for the knowledge and the picks. College football parlays presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. The college football playoffs are here. You can bet on all the big matchups with FanDuel. Plus, right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if you win. Just scan the QR code to bet college football on America's #1 sportsbook.